the advice we've got from there has been absolutely superb. So we are still working out what we've got and what we can do with it and how we can help it. So next slide, please. The recommendation is always to make a map. And I did find that a really useful objective. It's not a terribly brilliant map, but it does work. We've got basically a rectangular area. There are 2 permanent paths and water on 2 sides. That's not immediately obvious, that water, and there are churchgoers who would be quite surprised, I think, to realise it was. It's a land drain. Part serves as a moat to the old rectory next door, and then we have a public footpath as well, the most direct route across the churchyard to the footbridge in the bottom left-hand corner. And doing the map has helped us work out what habitat we have. It's this very much of 2 halves, our churchyard. The south side, that's the bit on the left, was cleared of headstones in the 1930s. Some used for a headstone path on the top of the map, and the rest left in a heap at the bottom. And all around the edges is trees and shrubs and ivy. But on that northern side, on the right-hand side, there's a serpentine wall, which is sometimes known, I think mostly in Suffolk, as a crinkle-crankle wall, and that belongs to the neighbouring property. So next slide, please. So there on the left is the headstone path, and in the middle there's that crinkle-crankle wall and the sort of scrubby ivy trees and shrubs in the middle. And on the right-hand side, the headstone stacks, which has been undisturbed since the 1930s and probably is home to far too many creatures for us to disturb. So we've left them. And the next slide, please. We have lots and lots of trees, and we have so many that we haven't really got a management plan as such, except to remove sycamore and holly seedlings as and when we find them. We haven't yet identified all of them, but we have had them surveyed. We were fortunate to be able to piggyback onto a survey that the Civil Parish Council were having done, and that identified 2 trees that could be removed and 3 trees for us to keep an eye on. And having received our tree surgeon's report, we applied to the diocese for permission to fell 2 dead holly trees, which then became wood piles to encourage insects and small mammals, etc. So next slide, please. Which is just a warning, really. Before you do anything to a tree in a churchyard, please, please, please check for TPOs, tree preservation orders, with your local council, which for us was East Lindsey. And whether or not there are TPOs, always consult your diocesan advisory committee. One of our local churches didn't, and were in very hot water for quite a while. Damaging listed trees can mean a fine of up to £20,000 per tree. So please, please check. Next slide. We think we have approximately 11 Irish yews and 17 common yews, unless we've misidentified them, which is always a possibility. Last year's webinars included a fascinating session on yew trees, so we're working what we learned into our management plan, using the recommended methods of controlling ivy on the common yews. And we hope to ask our C of E primary school to help us count them and measure them in this coming summer. And judging by his girth, our Herdman yew on the left-hand side is our oldest one. Next slide. We do have deciduous trees. These are the tallest and most prolific leaf droppers, and they drop their leaves on the parking area and the headstone paths. That's always something we have to think about. Next slide. There's the headstone path again in winter and summer. On the left-hand side of that first one is the former holly tree, and on the right we have our leaf mould pile. We might as well do something with the leaves, so we're making them into leaf mould. And this is a wonderful shady area with snowdrops in the early spring and followed quickly by wild garlic later on. The area to the right of this picture is owned by somebody else, and they thinned out the trees in there so that area is not as shady as it used to be. But then again, we can't control everything. So, you know, things go on and we have to work with what we've got. Next slide. More deciduous trees at the west end that give the dapple shade over the glade area, which I'll talk about in a minute. The wych elm and the beech, which are beautiful. And the next slide. This is our glade area. Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust helped us to start this. They scarified and raked the area and scattered some locally sourced seeds. The first year wasn't very successful as we didn't really know what we were doing and we didn't cut it at the right time. But at the end of that first year, a volunteer appeared who had previous experience of sowing a wildflower meadow, literally a godsend. He's produced the management plan specifically for this area, very similar to the ones on the Caring for God's Acre website. And he sources the seeds, and they're mostly from local verges within a 5-mile radius. So very, very much local seeds. He mows the paths in the glade area, the main grass area being cut by a contractor. And together with another volunteer, he cuts the grass and leaves it to dry for the seeds to come out. At the end of this season, it'll be the 3rd year and it'll be time to take stock and see what we want to do for the next 3. Next slide. Some of the things we've introduced, and it's that bottom left one, that's the yellow rattle that helps everything, helps break up the grasses underneath and gives space for other things to grow. What's not added there is a ragged robin, which has just happened to be my favourite flower, and I asked for seeds and we got them. That was lovely to have. Our next slide, sorry. This is the moat that divides us from the old rectory. It's the land drain between the two, and it's lovely and moist down there. It's quite humid, and it's a place that's loved by dragonflies and damselflies. I knew nothing about these when we started, but I checked with these websites, and they do a monthly newsletter, which I receive, so that helps us inform us as we go along. Next slide. We use these field studies councils guides. We have them in the church for people to look at. They come in such a large variety, and who knew there were so many different ladybirds? I'm sure I didn't before I saw the spotter. They're just so useful. Recommended. Our next slide. And these are things we have available in the church if people are passing. Those guides. We have a churchyard trail, which isn't half as good as Isabel and Mike, so I'm going to work on that over the summer. We use Big Bird Watch, Big Butterfly Count, Bumblebee Conservation Trust, all those things that help us inform both us and our visitors. And I'm doing a daily post this week on Facebook for those who want to see about that. And the next slide, please. And this is our final slide. This is the view from the church towards the glade, in between contractor cuts. And it's just a beautiful space, just for time to sit back and let the world go by. And the view from the porch where we usually sit and have our teas and coffees and biscuits. We don't have a kitchen, we don't have a toilet, but we do have teas and coffees and enjoy our time there. Thank you.
Wow, I'm very glad you relaxed at the end, Ruth. You've done so much. What an inspiring presentation. I was sort of thinking with this presentation, you were much more at the beginning of your journey, and in a way you are, but also in a way you're very, very well onto it. You've done a huge amount of things. That was lovely to see. Thank you so much. And next we have Isabel and Mike Carter from St Lawrence's Church in Church Stretton in Shropshire. And they've been managing the churchyard for people and nature for about 15 years. Mike particularly involved in the management, and Isabel more involved in Eco Church, which they'll also mention. And both of them very keen and informed naturalists. So I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. If we could have the first slide, please, Liam. We are fortunate, as Harriet said, to live in sunny Shropshire. Really, really lovely area next to the Long Mynd and Caradoc. We're a parish of 3 churches, but I'm really just, well, I'm responsible only for one of them, the churchyard, and that's St. Lawrence in Church Stretton itself. It's a medieval church, grade 1 listed. It's a very active, quite large body of people. So the church, in the sense of the people who come in the congregation, we had an electoral roll of 155, and there's lots of volunteer activities like a food bank and music, choirs, etc. So we're very fortunate in that. The churchyard itself is about 0.8 of an acre, so a third of a hectare, and it's right in the town centre. So it's right next to the town market. We're only about 25 metres from the main high street. And there's a public footpath that actually goes through the churchyard. It's closed churchyard in the sense that there are no longer any burials there. In fact, they stopped about the turn of the 19th, 20th century. And there are 2 other churchyards in town that are the responsibility of the town council. But our churchyard, during its time when it was open, was reused. So tombstones were moved to the side, and more people were buried on top of former tombs. Up until about 2010, tidiness was paramount in the management. And it was really only thereafter that we have been trying to manage it for biodiversity. It all started, I don't know whether Harriet remembers, but she came in 2010 when Caring for God's Acre was a regional charity as opposed to national. And she came with some members of the local community wildlife group and did a survey for us. And that really spurred the congregation into changing the management completely. Next slide, please. We rely heavily on Caring for God's Acre, its own resources, and they have a really good set of resources. And they suggested these 5 steps, and we more or less followed them verbatim. The first thing was to do research, so see what we've got, any previous surveys, heritage, etc., etc. Look at old maps and draw up new maps of our own of the churchyard. We then drew up a plan for different cutting regimes in different parts of the churchyard. So some areas that are mown regularly, particularly if people want wedding photos and things like that. We do mow on either side of all of the paths, and I think that helps to tell people that the churchyard is being managed and not just left. Inform, well, yes, try and get permission from church leaders. We needed to do that, and from the PCC for changing the management, and work out how we're going to measure our progress. We started at the same time as the church embarked on eco-church, and so that in itself provides a measure of the progress for one element of eco-church, which was the churchyard. Next slide, please. So, putting the plan into action. Firstly, we tried to build a team. We have 3 or 4 members who are regular on the mowing rota. And that is not too onerous, actually, because it really means someone does it once a week on their own. So one person is only doing it once a month during the cutting season. We have work parties about 6 times a year. And then we have an autumn clear up for a couple of days when we really do need help to try and size and cut the parts of the churchyard that have been left standing during the summer. We visited other churchyards, see what other people were doing, other churches were doing, and we found that really helpful. Surveying, so we'd had the initial survey, but we did invite other experts to come and survey. So, for example, of lichens, or of fungi, or of other taxon groups. One element which was key is trying to reduce soil fertility. From 2010 onwards, all the arisings, all the cuttings were removed so that the fertility is not returning to the soil, trying to reduce the fertility. There was one particular area of the churchyard that had been used as a sort of compost dump for many years, and it's been a struggle to get the fertility down, but it's taken about 10-15 years to do that. Stay organic, before we changed management, herbicides were sometimes used around the church building itself and around tombstones. Looked pretty ugly, and we decided not to do that. Introducing plant species, yes, we did, but with care. Only of local provenance, so only seed that was collected very locally has been introduced. So, but that's been very successful. Yellow rattle was an obvious one, but lots of others like eyebright and carrot and cowslip and many other species that we have introduced since we changed the management. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand over here to Isabel.
Yes, okay. So I think the role that I have brought to it has been very much trying to encourage people to be appreciative of the improvements in biodiversity. We spent a lot of energy in sort of trying to make it a relatively small space, really, the churchyard, but we've tried to use as many parts of it as we can. With swift boxes, nest boxes, bat boxes. The bat boxes were actually put up for us when work was done on the church roof. And then other things which I'll refer to in a minute as we go through the different slides. Okay, next, please. Yes, one of the first things we did was swift boxes up in the tower, negotiating the bell tower to put speakers and specially made swift boxes. We've also had, from last summer, a peregrine falcon that has taken to perching right on the very top of the tower. It hasn't nested as yet, but that would be quite exciting if it did. There's plenty of wood pigeons around. Okay, next, please. A lichen survey was done, I think 15+ years ago, and there are a beautiful selection of lichens in the churchyard. I think one of the most successful things we've done in terms of encouraging folk to just stop and appreciate is to put up small signs all around the churchyard. These are painted black with a matte black blackboard paint, really, and then a chalk-based pen, which can be rubbed out. In fact, we find we usually have to paint over it again. So that each year the signs vary a little bit. And they're a lovely mix of quotes from well-known people, biblical quotes here from the Psalms. We've got factual ones. There's one here, we've got a delightful stone wall, south-facing stone wall, where we've got several species of mining bees. So we've got factual ones. Sometimes we name the plants if they're unusual. And then we've also got just proverbs. This lovely North American proverb, which I think is so apt for what we're doing. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So always being mindful of the next generation. As Micah said, we vary the cutting regime. To keep everybody happy, alongside the main paths, there are always an area is left mown, Mike often comes back fuming. He said, oh, someone's cut too wide a strip. But anyway, we generally aim that each side of the path there'll be a strip that's cut. And also towards the front of the church, we have a whole area that is regularly kept short, particularly for the benefit of wedding photos. So it's a natural area for folk to come outside and take photos. And if the church is outside for singing or anything, you know, it's a natural space where folk don't have to trample through longer grass. Relaxing is quite important. We've got no less than 5 benches around the churchyard, and these are really well used. It is quite a thoroughfare, as Mike said. We've got the information centre and the library one side, we've got the marketplace and the town on the other. So all sorts of people wander through and are delighted to find benches, especially when they're south facing, to sit and have their sandwiches or catch up with friends, have a coffee. So they're really appreciated. We've also run Churches Count on Nature events. We've done that twice. We're hoping we're doing it again this year. We've sort of basically set up a table, collected a few samples for folk to look at, and then just encouraged people to go around, look, see what they can find or photograph or collect in bug pots. We've tried to make this of interest for all ages. I find that with youngsters, you know, you give them a bug pot and set them off, they just love it and just get so excited with what they catch. And then we're trying to identify it as well. When we've run events, we've seemed to have attracted all ages, really. Our church is blessed with a fair number of children. So when we've run events, we've had activities for children to draw, to fill in, to tick off things that they've seen. And it's lovely when you see youngsters just absolutely focused on nature. And I think, you know, for everybody, when we stop and we actually look at what's there, you know, you really close in on a beetle. They're just amazing creatures, which certainly for me, it's a big aspect of worship. We've occasionally had church picnics where we've actually combined them with bug hunts. These two are completely unrelated, and I think it's a lovely photo. You know, the little child and this older lady, both absolutely fascinated with what they've caught. It's a lovely way of bringing folk together. And we've been really quite encouraged with the wildlife that we found in the churchyard. Comber butterflies love the brambles around the edges. This is one of my favourite beetles, the yellow and black longhorn beetle, but we found several other species of beetles as well, appreciating the longer vegetation. When the church has run holiday clubs, we've been able to use the churchyard sometimes. This was some years ago when we set a treasure trail around the churchyard, and the children had to go off and find a whole list of 10 different things. Something blue, something slimy, something smelly, something beautiful, you know, a whole range of things, which really encourages children to go off and investigate. This was coming back with some of their findings. You find the lads particularly like the smelly challenge. The churchyard has also been a lovely venue for a prayer. We had a prayer walk around the community a couple of times. So the churchyard has always been a lovely place to stop and pray in beautiful surroundings. And then, as Mike mentioned, Eco Church, we started about the same time as the churchyard. Bronze was a relatively easy step, silver, more of a challenge. We are vaguely working towards gold, but that is a big challenge, actually. Eco Church Gold, made slightly more challenging now because the steps have changed. So there are several things we have to rework again, but it's been a good focus to have. And I think, yeah, we're looking forward to reaching gold one day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was, again, like our first speaker, absolutely brilliant and really inspiring. And Great. One thing I really picked up from that was that you managed to get a really good event for children rushing all over the place, despite the fact that clearly all the grass by then had been cut. And it was actually looking quite sort of, not in the spring and the summer and the height of biodiversity, but you still managed to find something fun to do. I think that as somebody who's tried to think of things, I was particularly impressed with that. What we're going to do now is Liam, if you could stop sharing now, or sorry, just before you do, I've just popped that slide up to just remind people about the other webinars. Do have a look on our website and register for the other ones if you haven't, and catch up with the ones that have happened if you've missed them. But if you could now stop sharing, Liam. And we've got 4 sort of questions that we've sort of thought would be useful for a bit of discussion initially, that I'll go through, and then we'll go through the questions that have been popping up in the chat. And if anybody else has got other questions, keep popping them in the chat, and we'll scoop those up at the end. So the first thing, and I think I'm going to start, Mike and Isabel, with you, because you've been doing it for longer. What's the one thing that you've done in this journey that you would recommend to other people?
I think probably the signs. I mean, we've got about 30, 40 signs that go out in the spring and then are taken up sort of late autumn. So every year they're fresh. There are always some new ones. Some are sort of kept to one side, but they just catch people's attention. They make people pause and really look at what's in the churchyard. And maybe they don't know the name of a plant. Maybe they've never heard or seen anything about a mining bee. It's just lovely to see folks stop and look. And every time we go through the churchyard, there are visitors passing through, and they just go round and look at the signs. They're a bit of a fiddle to make, but relatively simple and really beneficial.
So you heard it here: blackboard paint and then a chalk pen. It should rub out, but actually it doesn't really. Ruth, is there something that you would recommend that you've done and you think, that was the moment, that was the thing that would be the best thing?
I've written down the thing about the blackboard signs. For me, it's just spending time in the churchyard and just seeing what's there, and taking the time yourself to just stop and look, and using all your senses, and just listen, observe, and just take that time to see what's there. So if someone's passing through and looks a bit interested, you can say, oh, that's a ranunculus, or that's a buttercup, or that's yesterday figwort was something I found yesterday. So we have a herb book as well in the church, so you can look up and see what their use of that plant might have been as a herb. But it's just being there and just letting it speak to you, I think.
Lovely. Thank you both for both of those answers. I think we'll all think about both of those answers. They're great. Delighted to hear both lots of talk mention Caring for God's Acre and our resources. Obviously, I'm beaming away at that, and that you've used our 5 steps, which was the subject of the first webinar as well, to do your management planning. And Ruth, I loved your home drawn map. That's exactly what we hope people will do, not feel they have to get a digital one or a typed one or something like that. Just do it yourself, but make it accurate enough to work. Perfect. Yeah. So thank you for that. But as well as Caring for God's Acre, have you found any individual who was particularly helpful, or any organisation that was particularly helpful, that really helped you on your journey? Ruth, let's start with you this time.
The Wildlife Trust. It's Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. I mean, they gave us the idea of what was there and what we could do with it. And then when our volunteer came to help with the meadow, the glade, what we call the glade area, that was just, these are things we would never have known what to do and how to care best. So, and it looks a treat at the minute. The grass is lovely and long, and we can see the yellow rattle coming up and things like that. And it's just, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's always somebody there who's either seen it before, done it before, and it's learn every day. Every day's a school day. You just learn and learn. Yeah.
How did you know to go? Do you know the Wildlife Trust beforehand? I mean, they are, you know, I would go to the Wildlife Trust as well for local help.
Somebody probably just said, "Why don't you ask them?" You know, why don't you ask them? So we did, and they very kindly came out to see us. So
yeah. And the individual popped up because they live.
it's someone who lives in the village, and he actually lives in the cottage where the founders of the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust used to live. So, you know.
Yeah, that is so useful having a volunteer.
He's now chained in the churchyard. He's not allowed to leave.
Oh well, at least he's got a kettle.
Yeah.
Mike, anything you'd like to say to us?
Well, I do shamelessly advertise Caring for God's Acres website, you know, which does have some superb resources on it. So let's get that over with. Secondly, is really just tapping into local expertise. Yes, the local Wildlife Trust, Shropshire Wildlife Trust, but we also have a community wildlife group in the Stretton Valley. There are in Shropshire, and I'm sure in most counties, for whatever plant or animal group, you know, there is an interest group, you know, so be it the local birds group or the local fungus group, the local lichen group, and the Shropshire Botanical Society, how I know have been surveying churchyards around the county, particularly remote rural ones. Entomologists, we have a group in Shropshire called the Joy of Wildlife, who are a group of expertise in a whole range of invertebrate and botanical groups. And just get in touch. Just get in touch and invite them to come and survey your churchyard. And I think you'd be surprised. We've used them a lot.
How do people find those groups? I mean, I would think go to your local environmental records office. Would that be, or the Wildlife Trust? How would you, if you're not a naturalist yourself, and you're thinking, golly, how on earth do I find a bat group or a botany group or a bird group? Where there isn't a sort of central list.
Well, you could sort of put into Google County Recorder for beetles or dragonflies or something, and that should, once you found one recorder, they will know all the other contacts. I mean, in Shropshire, it's relatively easy. There are several places where you can find those lists. But yes, it's just tracking down a county recorder. You know, they will be a pathway if they're not readily available on the website.
Just to be clear, the county recorder is somebody who's volunteered as an expert in a particular area, aren't they? And they've volunteered their time to collate the records in, let's say, beetles, check that they're accurate as best they can by looking at photographs or descriptions or talking to the people who've identified them, and then sort of certifying them as correct. So they have huge expertise, and they're also, yeah, they're real enthusiasts. So yes, that right. Search for the county recorders. That's a very good way. I wouldn't have thought of that one. Yeah, Ruth, how have you found? Well, you've found the Wildlife Trust and then individuals.
Yeah.
Have you found
There's also a Lincolnshire a group to encourage people to visit the Wolds, and I have a contact there who knows who to pass me on to if I've got a question. So I think it's like visit Lincolnshire Wolds or something. They help.
I've just spotted in the chat that Jessica's put up how to find your local environmental record centre.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
Yes,
That's it. Lincolnshire Wolds Countryside Service. Yes, thank you, Rachel.
That would definitely get you there wherever you are in the county. The local environmental record centre will get you. Brill, thank you very much. So my third sort of area to hear your views on is that great, well, perceived, sometimes real, sometimes perceived conflict between those who favour neatness, short grass, a particular managed look, and those who want to reduce the sort of intensity of the management and would prefer wildlife, more long grass, more wildlife, and can often describe it as wanting to rewild the church, which I think does strike fear into the first group, I must say. I wonder whether you've experienced that conflict of views as to how these places that are so special to so many people should look. Ruth, you've started more recently, so let's start with you. You've been more memorable, I think.
It doesn't really affect us in that same way because of the two halves of our churchyard. The one half is open, which is kept short, and the other side is kept short and the long bit, but with the path run through it. We may extend, not the long grass, but have some slightly longer grass, you know, the higher cut grass, on that side, but we keep the cut grass away from the wildlife area. That you if you're in one side of the churchyard, you don't see the other one. So
Right.
so it hasn't affected us in the same way as it might for Mike and Isabel in the centre of in that centre, because we're sort of tucked away. But we do get told if we don't get the grass cut in that short side, where nobody likes trying to get to the headstones. The headstones are through the long grass, so that's kept short, but we've got no conflict, fortunately.
Excellent, good to hear. Mike, you mentioned in your presentation that prior to 2010, I think it was, neatness and tidiness was one of the main drivers in management. So you clearly made quite a significant change. How did you feel people's attitude was to that?
When I first brought this before the PCC, 2009, I think it was, the decision was no, we want a tidy churchyard because we're surrounded by so much beautiful wild area. Mike took over the management a year or two later and just quietly just got on with it. And I think since then, it just looks so beautiful. You know, nobody's complained at all. And I think the fact that there is an area at the front that is kept short, you know, for whatever purpose, and all the paths are mowed, you know, for a narrow strip so that vegetation never falls over the pathways. I think it keeps everybody happy.
That's interesting. So you just went ahead and actually people didn't mind when you did it. I must say I've come across that before, where how people imagine it's going to change is so extreme that they're worried, and the reality is that they're fine with it. And also, as I think you both pointed out, they can see it's being managed. They can see it isn't neglect. It's a different management, but it's management. Oh well, that's very good to hear that you just cracked on, and hopefully the PCC are now very happy with it. I mean, I suppose particularly Isabel and Mike, this one's for you, who've been doing this for a long time. I mean, do you feel that sort of strongly held view is changing with time? Do you think people are more polarized, less polarized? Are we in the same place as we were when you started?
Oh, I think things have improved considerably. I mean, there is a much more general realization that we need biodiversity, and the churchyard is a very good place to start. So attitudes have changed for whatever reason, you know, whether you put it down to Springwatch or David Attenborough or whatever, but attitudes have very definitely changed, and they see it now, and it's very rare that we get an adverse comment now.
We actually get loads of positive comments. I mean, visitors to the church hosts a music festival in the summer. So you get visitors from all over, and they're often saying, oh, please, can you pass the message back to, you know, the folk in charge of the church, how wonderful the churchyard looks. Or people write it in the visitors book, you know, so there's a lot of positive feedback as well.
Oh, that's very good to hear. My last sort of question is about moving species both in and out of churchyards. We'll start with bringing things in from outside, because you both mentioned that you brought in some. I mean, you both said carefully thought through species of very local provenance into the churchyards. Mike and Isabel, let's start with you. Why did you make that decision? What led you to start bringing more things in? I mean, sounds like a great idea to me, but you know.
Yeah, because the churchyard had been subjected to years and years and years of billiard table cutting, and generally the cuttings being left there, so they were just left there to mulch, which meant that fertility had increased. So it's a no-brainer, really. We needed to, after your initial survey back in 2010, it was a fairly limited list. And we knew that there were lots of species that ought to be there that weren't there. And so we did source seed locally and generally just scatter, strim a bit, strim patches, and then scatter seed in the autumn. Or molehills, if you've got molehills, scatter seed on the molehills or anthills, and gradually the biodiversity has increased very considerably.
Did things come in naturally as well? Have you found things pop up that you didn't plant and that?
We had some real oddities. I mean, for some reason we had Alexander's plant, which is really a seaside coastal plant, just appear out of nowhere, and it quickly disappeared as well. It has only appeared 1 year. So quite how on earth that came in, I don't know. So we have
on your trousers, I bet, after you've been to the seaside.
Probably,
yeah.
Probably. We did have back in, I think, 2005, we had a guerrilla daffodil planter who thought that he put daffodil bulbs all around the town, including in the churchyard, which we could have done without actually. And we've been trying to reduce the number of these shop-bought daffodils. So, but seed of local provenance, yes, fine.
What about you, Ruth? Anything to add to that?
Not really, just that very, we wanted something very local. We didn't want garden flowers particularly, although we keep that for the pots by the church door, which we either have bulbs in the spring for a bit of colour, but we keep that well away from everything else. But yeah, the yellow rattle is that big thing that just helps kick everything off. But there's a national meadow near us. That's the Willoughby Meadow. It's about 2 miles away from us, and seeds come from that area. So it is as local as we can get it. It's very, very much Lincolnshire rather than, but you know, as you say, visitors may well bring something in with them when they come.
Yes, I heard a very nice story about a meadow that got a patch of very, very, very intense yellow rattle, and then it turned out that the contractor who went from meadow to meadow cutting tiny little meadows had his mower had broken down there, and he'd had it sitting there for several hours while he was trying to fix it and banging away and rattling, and obviously all the seed stuck on the bottom of it had fallen down. So things get moved in ways that we don't know, and have always done as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
The drovers brought things.
Yeah.
My last thing, and then we will move on to the questions in the chat. Don't worry. Is, have you tried the converse? Have you tried moving species out, viewing your churchyard as a bit of a sort of hub, a bit of an arc, if you like, for wildlife, from which the species can spread out into the wider. Ruth, let's start with you first. You're newer in the game, so I don't know whether you'll have got round to that. Though you do seem to have got round to an awful lot in your 4 to 5 years.
We'd like the badgers to move out, but fortunately they're not setting, so that's okay. We'll cope. But I understand they do a lot of scuffing because they're going after bumblebee nests, which I'm not happy about. But they're there. We're there, and that's it, really, isn't it? But we haven't really thought about taking anything elsewhere yet, or moving things on.
Yeah. Isabel, Mike, either of you, have you done anything like that, or?
Well, the churchyard is now pretty abundant in some species, and we've had people come and ask, can they collect seed? So people have come and collected yellow rattle seed and eyebright seed and carrots and knapweed, etc., etc. So that's been great. I think this year we will probably put up a sign just saying, help yourself to seed. We have a town nature reserve not far away, which includes a meadow. And last year, no, the year before last, the town council took a whole load of green hay from us. So the scything that we had cut, they took it away, which was great because we had to get rid of it. And they then scattered it over their meadow. Last year they didn't do that. You do need to get the ducks lined up to do this. You need to get a meadow that's going to receive the green hay in the right condition first, before you do the transfer. And last year the timing didn't work out. But we hope the town council will do that again this year.
That's a brilliant story. I've known of churchyards where local farmers who are perhaps creating a meadow, you know, they're doing environmental grants, they're creating a meadow or improving their field edges, will maybe not cut and take away, but you know, if people can get it cut, they'll come and just rake up and take it all away, which is perfect. So yes, very good. Very good. Okay, well, thank you for all of those thoughts. I'm now going to go to the questions in the chat. Siobhan, you've asked, do you have a list of wildlife friendly and burial ground suitable plants, please? No, is the short answer. We don't do that. It's a nice idea. There would be some things I think that could be suggested all over the country. We'd be a little anxious about doing that because, you know, conditions would be so different from Northumberland to Cornwall. I would say the best thing you can do, which is very much what Ruth was saying, is see if there's a meadow nearby. If you know that you can see your site isn't rich, first of all, absolutely check what's there. Check what's there first. And if you're not a botanist yourself, see if somebody who is will have a quick look, let an area grow long and see what does come up. You're often surprised. But if it really is species poor, perhaps because it's been mown repeatedly for many years with the cuttings not picked up, and you are needing to introduce stuff, I'd look to local nature reserves around you and get in touch with your wildlife trust again, see if there's any local wildlife sites. They're very often on private land. And so it would be a case of letting that private individual know that you would like to be in contact. Again, speak to your local environmental record centres and find out if there's a good meadow, a good source of seed, and then just see what's growing well there, because that will give you an indication of what are the plants in your area that will be suitable for your churchyard. Any from either Isabel and Mike or Ruth, anything you'd like to just chip in? Well, if I'm saying things, please add.
I would say please don't go and buy a packet of seed. You know, some people, we do know of one churchyard where they simply went and bought packets of seed from the local seed merchant and then scattered it about, and so they now have flowers which are just not local at all, and probably not suitable for that area at all.
And the other thing is that we've got a number of small meadows in Shropshire, and that there is an organisation that sort of brings them together, and several of those will offer green hay on a small scale. So that could be, you know, if an area of the churchyard could be prepared in the autumn, cut fairly short, and then green hay from a wild, rich area meadow spread over it. That's another way, which may cost nothing but driving there and back.
Yeah.
And it does take time. It's not going to be, as we found out, it's not perfect after the first year. You know, you do need to keep at it.
Yep.
Keep making sure that your conditions are right for what you've put there.
Yeah.
Yellow rattle in particular can just fail some years and thrive in others. It's very contrary, I think.
It's a thriving year this year in this part of Lincolnshire.
Good to hear. Yeah, we've mentioned green hay a few times. Just to be clear, green hay is basically the grass cuttings. As quickly as possible after they've been cut, scoop them up, put them in a carrier bag in the boot of your car, or fill a whole trailer, whatever works for you. Get them to your site, which in advance needs to have been cut really short. Get them down good and quick before they start heating up and composting. And yes, and that also, as well as moving the seed, it also moves some bacterial spores, fungal spores. Some invertebrates will have hitched a ride without a doubt. So you slightly move more of the whole system rather than just, say, dried prepared seed if you were to buy it. Tracy makes a very, very helpful point about tree protection, which is to also see if you're in a conservation area. For people in the Anglican Church, the Church Heritage Records of England, in England and Wales, do hold a lot of information, including designations. They include certainly wildlife sites and triple SIs. I'm now wondering whether they'll tell you if you've got ancient trees, ancient, better and notable trees. I'm now just trying to remember whether they have tree preservation orders or conservation areas on. Do you know, Liam? Do you know whether they do or not? We can check, but yeah, no, sorry, we can't remember. But they are a good source of information, as well as also your local authority. Charles, your step 4, reduce soil fertility. How did you measure this? I think this is one for you, Mike.
We didn't. Yeah. We didn't measure, so we could have. We didn't. We could have tried NPK testing and that sort of thing, but no, we didn't. We just looked at the growth of particularly the bully grasses. The bully grasses like cocksfoot and Yorkshire fog. False oat grass. These, if they're flourishing, it suggests that the soil is over fertile and you won't be able to get many wildflowers competing with them. So unless you get that fertility down, then really you won't get biodiversity as a meadow.
And aren't nettles as well an indicator of richness? Because
right, yeah,
that's why I understood. So where we have beds of nettles, that we've tried to stick the yellow rattle there as well.
Yeah, we do have some weeds that we discourage. Wherever there's nettles, hogweed, bramble, we keep under control. We have a pet hatred of green alkanet, which in this region is sort of taking over meadows in some areas. So we vigorously try and weed them out.
I think that's a really good point, because obviously there's wildlife value in all of those plants. Particularly people will go, oh, nettles, they're so good for butterflies, as indeed they are. But you have to make your choices. You make your management choices. You're considering the people who are visiting. You're considering the look of the site, the size of the site. And also, with something like bramble and nettle, certainly, I know in the Church Stretton area, I'm afraid I don't know your area, Ruth, but it's very common. It's very common. So you're making your choices, and you do need to perhaps have an answer to people go, oh no, but you should have done this or you should have done that as well. Yeah, I don't think you need to actually test for soil fertility. I'd quite agree, although it might be interesting. You just look, you can see the structure of the sward change as the fertility goes down, and those tough bruiser coarse grasses are less able to dominate. Oh, here's one for me and you, Ruth. So why don't you start? What is the benefit of a leaf mold pile? Is it invertebrates?
But it may well be, but it was really just to get them out the way. There's so much in that area, but my thought was, a la Gardener's World, we could maybe mix it in with peat-free compost when we're doing our pots for by the church door. We want some herbs and things in that area that we don't want to put into the churchyard, so that leaf mold would be a thing. But yes, it is quite a moist site. There probably are things like slowworms or something on that area, I would have thought, but I don't go poking around too much because I don't want to disturb anything.
Yeah, and yes, so it's a brilliant sort of, as you say, it's a brilliant medium to add to compost. But yes, it is indeed really good for invertebrates. It'd be good for fungi, very good for overwintering things, very good for wintering things. And with invertebrates comes creatures that feed on the invertebrates, be it reptiles like slowworms, frogs, newts, toads. It's absolute myth that they live in ponds. They spend most of their time out of ponds, and nice wet damp leaf mold or deadwood piles is exactly the kind of place where they might be. Hedgehogs as well. So yeah, very, very valuable, like deadwood, also piles of leaves. So it's valuable to leave the leaves in situ, but obviously that has a management implication. So putting them in a pile is keeping them there on site, getting all the benefits, whilst
there's a lot of ivy on that side of our site, and I don't want to encourage that any more than it's encouraged already. So we like to get the leaves off that. Yeah, keep it away.
Yeah. Paul, you've asked about the need to reduce soil fertility. I'll have a quick go at that one, and then you might chip in and add if you'll forget. But we have dealt with it very quickly. But basically, there are certain plants that can really take advantage of a fertile soil. And in particular, it's coarse grasses that form big tussocks, and they just physically dominate, swamp other things, shade them out. Whereas the fine grasses and the wildflowers, they can't really benefit much from soil fertility. They might be a little bit bigger, but they won't just be hugely bigger as these coarser things are. So they just literally squeezed out, physically, literally swamped. So yes, reducing the soil fertility is vital, and that is why we all bang on about raking up after mowing or having a collecting mower, which I know is a whole extra job. If you're having to strim, it sort of doubles the work. But by reducing the soil fertility, the length of grass, the amount of grass that you have to cut will go down, as well as you getting in wildflowers and it looking very attractive. Also, the height of it. The fine grasses on the infertile, low fertility soil might go up to about 18 inches, whereas the coarse grasses they're the ones that do you a quick 3 or 4 foot and bean you on the head with wet seeds when you're walking past and all of that. So it does look a much more welcoming sight if you haven't got that very, very high vegetation that thrives on high fertility. Yeah. Anything to add, anybody?
Well, I think, although it's been mentioned several times about yellow rattle, but I don't think it's actually been said it's a parasite on the roots of grasses. So that's why it's so useful. It takes a few years to really have impact, but it actually, it physically stops the tall grasses from being able to flourish.
Yes, no, thank you. Very good point. It needs short grass while it's germinating. So you do need to have it short in March and maybe April, depending on how cold it is, so that when it's germinating, it can get its first few leaves going and get going. Otherwise, that gets shaded out, and that's one of the reasons why it doesn't germinate. Paul's given us an interesting, Tracy, sorry, Tracy's given us an interesting article to look at. I haven't had a chance to have a look at that, but you will receive a copy of this, which will include the chat, so you can go back later and have a little look. Jackie, question, random. I saw somewhere on a website a quote I'd like to make a sign for in our churchyard. It was to the effect of, in the midst of pain, of losing people and death, enjoy the life here in nature and be encouraged. That's not it, but if anyone could point me to the original, I'd be delighted. I'm afraid I can't think what that is. But if anyone does, or they may already have done lower down, I haven't scrolled down and spotted it.
Just type what you know into Google and it will very often find the quote for you. Whatever words you know that are correct, just put them in and it'll do the rest almost certainly.
We did with the signs very deliberately not make them all biblical. So yes, some biblical signs, but we had some completely secular signs, whether it be of North American, Indian, or of Shakespeare or whatever. That was just our policy.
And David Attenborough.
And
but
David Attenborough.
He's kind of almost a saint, isn't he?
I'm aware that we're running over, but we'll keep going, I think, unless any of the speakers need to leave until we've got to the bottom of the questions. So, but if you need to leave, obviously just leave. Nigel points out that Ruth Churchyards has water on both sides, and indeed that will bring an awful lot of biodiversity. And asked about installing ponds. I've slightly changed my tune on ponds, actually. I used to say, absolutely don't do it. No, you've got this wonderful rich site and it doesn't have ponds in, and put the pond in the neighbouring garden and let all the amphibians use the pond to breed in, but use the churchyard to hunt in, to overwinter in for all the rest of their lives. But I'm slightly veering towards small container ponds, because I've seen a few examples where people have had a Belfast sink, something like that, with stones piled around it so things can get in and out, because you know they can't climb those steep sides, and gained a lot of pleasure from that. So I would still really advise against trying to dig down and put in a pond. I think just starting off with asking your Diocesan Advisory Council how they feel about that would probably put you off. The permissions, I think, would be very, very hard to get, and you would be disturbing ground where large numbers of people probably have been buried over centuries. So you know, it would be very difficult. So on the whole, it's a place that already has a lot of rich habitats, and you don't need a pond, and encourage your neighbours to have ponds. But I would make the exception for perhaps a raised Belfast sink pond if you have perhaps a church garden or a seated area where it would be appropriate and really enjoyed by people. But do think, how are things going to get in and out? Any thoughts from anybody else?
I'd agree, and it's certainly with the Anglicans, you probably need a faculty to go.
Well,
very definitely you would need a faculty to go digging
The F word
in your burial ground. But yes, we're quite envious of Ruth's land drain, because it must give you quite a different set of species there. We haven't got anything like that, but yes, a Belfast sink may well be a possibility.
I think
there's
a Belfast sink would be the perfect height for dogs, of which men pass through and would all enjoy drinking it. I'm not sure that would help.
One or two might jump in and out as well. Yes, Ruth.
There's a moorhen down there that we've noticed in the last couple of years that's having to come into the churchyard for food, because I don't think the land drain really, well, I don't know how living it is, but it moves too fast for me to photograph it. Like the dragonflies, they move too fast and I can't photograph them. But there is a moorhen and a family down there.
Oh, very nice. You also, Nigel also makes the point that there's a health and safety point of view, and indeed,
I know,
in the event that you got anything that could possibly be described,
it's steep side down into a ditch, really. So keep away.
You do have to consider that as well. So yes, get your neighbours to put in ponds, Nigel, and think about a Belfast sink. David would like to see the quotes that you used on your signs. David, you will be getting this presentation, so you can go back over and have a look at them. And maybe you need to come to Church Stretton and have a look around. Do you have a sort of a lot of photos of all the signs you've used over the years, Isabel? Or
yes, I mean, somewhere I actually wrote quite a lot down on a Word document, I think, whether I could dig it out. We've certainly got more photos of them, but yes, ideally come and visit.
But we don't want all the churchyards around the country to have the same sign, so
good point.
Please just keep your eyes open, and you know, if you want, Google quotations about nature, something like that, and you'll come up with a whole list of stuff.
And also
notebook.
some of them were factual, you know, because there's all sorts of plants that people are really interested to know a little bit about them, like yew trees, you know, and their use as longbows and medicines and all that sort of thing. So yeah, once you get into it, you won't be short of ideas.
Ruth, I loved the thing that you've done of putting a book in the church, telling people about their medicinal uses as well.
It's really good.
Very nice. And that alone would give you any amount of information for boards as well, wouldn't it? You could just...
It does, yeah. But even the Latin names, actually, they're quite telling.
Yeah.
Figwort I was talking about earlier, the first part of his name is Scrophularia. So it's one of these scrofula things. That's one of the things that comes in the Maundy service, isn't it? The Maundy service started because the King's touch would heal scrofula. Perhaps he had a handful of figwort at the time or something.
Nigel points out that they have shared silences, involve people sitting in the church or churchyard about 30 minutes. I think that's a lovely idea, and if you did that in the spring, hopefully it would be a shared sound of birdsong as well. Yeah, very nice. Rather late in the day, but Jessica's in with a big question here. What would you say were the biggest obstacles to accomplishing what you have, and has the reaction been entirely positive? Ruth, would you like to start with that? I'm aware of the time, so
I think it's keeping people involved is the hardest thing. We're in a much smaller area with a smaller sort of catchment, and I'm hoping that if we get this primary school involved, then that might help families come. But it's perhaps getting people to stop. We have lots of dog walkers who walk through, but they never stop unless I'm there saying, "Oh, do you know what this bug's called?" Because I don't. You know, they wouldn't know there was a bug on a plant. You know, they don't stop. So it's trying to get people to appreciate even half as much as we do, but keeping people involved and interested and that, I think.
Thank you. Mike or Isabel, I don't know which of you'd like to.
A couple of things come to mind. We have one or two inappropriate trees in the churchyard. Someone 60 or 70 years ago planted 5 or 6 Douglas firs, which are lovely trees, but they're inappropriate for a churchyard. We have only one left, but it does cause, it's over 100 feet high, and it causes quite a bit of aggro with neighbours. A second challenge is the autumn clear up and disposing of the green material. We don't compost, which we should do, but because it's a town centre churchyard, it would be quite a messy. It would be difficult to keep a big compost area tidy. So we simply use 3 green bins, and then, as I say, we got rid of some to the local town council as green hay. That is a challenge, actually, finding somewhere where you can usefully get rid of a lot of green material in the autumn.
I think that stops a lot of people from having areas of long grass, actually, is the sheer bulk that you produce, and finding a solution to that. I think that is a common problem. Yes.
I haven't got an answer to it, really.
No, every site's different. Every answer is different. I mean, I do think also, perhaps by acknowledging that it's a problem, perhaps it's something that one has to think, well, this is something we may need to pay for, and see if there's a local farmer who would take it, but would need, you know, as a paid service. That would be, you know, having in mind this isn't something that we'll just deal with ourselves. We need to allocate some resources to it. Yeah.
The actual physical thing of cutting it in the autumn is quite a challenge. So we tried to make it a nice sort of feel-good event, you know, providing tea, cake, the chance to come and learn how to scythe. And it was great because a number of folk from the community, you know, who weren't churchgoers at all, turned up to help as well. So it was a nice sociable time over a couple of afternoons that got the job done.
Thank you. Jane from Machynlleth has got an interesting question. Jane, it sounds as though, so I'll read it. We don't have a public footpath through the graveyard. Perhaps we should, as people are climbing over some railings as a shortcut. We had an expensive bill to repair railings last year. Do you have any advice? It's hard to give advice on that without seeing the actual site, Jane, but I'm guessing it's a shortcut that a lot of people want to use, or perhaps it was a previous path, not an official one. I don't know. I mean, and also I'm not absolutely sure about the law in Wales, but in England, you would perhaps talk to your rights of way officer and consider putting in a permissive path. which would allow you more control than an actual footpath, would be a way around it, and then putting in a gate. I think you do, if people are climbing it so much they're breaking the railings, you'll need to acknowledge that is a way that people want to go, and find some way to allow them to do it, because I think otherwise that's going to happen over and over again. But yeah, see if your council can help you with that in any way. Has anyone found a way of discovering plastic in a churchyard and compost heap? Asks Susan. Yeah, the extent to which people are sure that plastic flowers can decompose is quite unusual, isn't it? I think one simply has to try and speak to people. If you see putting it in a compost heap, and explain that it needs to go in a different bin.
We have 4 sets of bins now here in Lincolnshire. And it's changed in the last year. So we've paid for a green bin, which we do have, but then people who are bringing flowers bring them in with wrapped in film, and the film goes in the wrong bin all the time. We can't keep up with which bin it's supposed to go into, but people are confused over that. And yes, we're always taking them off the compost heap. So we don't want to put signs up that keep saying, do not do this, do not do that, but sometimes I think I want to.
I think every church manager wants to. But I agree, it would be quite a strong act to tell people that they can't do something that they want to do. Yeah.
Just keep an eye on the bins and what's in them. Yeah.
And also know that it is a shared problem. Everyone's dealing with the problem. Is that happening in Church Stretton as well?
Because it's a closed churchyard, not a lot, because all of the graves are well over 100 years old. We do actually have a remembrance square, which is really only about 3 meters by 3 meters around within a box hedge. And so if we do get plastic flowers, they're there. And we as mowers, in time, when they start looking scruffy, pick them up and put them in the appropriate bin. So it's not too much of an issue with us.
Right, thank you. Timothy says, if a local authority has done an ecology report for a closed churchyard, well, that's great that they have, fantastic. Is there still scope for community public surveying of the types you've spoken about? And we encourage. Absolutely, Timothy. There's 2 reasons why. One is it's a really good engagement tool and really good fun, and you open people's eyes to nature in the way that both of our speakers have been speaking about. And the other is that nature changes, and no report is complete. It's done at a certain time of year. Different times of years you'll find other things. Different people will find different things, as things change. So yes, please. Use it as a baseline, perhaps. This is what we know a professional found, and just see what else other people find, and keep encouraging them to do so. Also, when you've had a report done, it's often quite a good way to encourage other recorders to come in, because they might, for example, go, goodness me, that's a really long list of plants. There'll be a lot of different invertebrates on that, or conversely, there's a lot of invertebrates. I wonder what they're all feeding on. Let's go and have a look. So you can use it to actually encourage more recording by existing naturalists who are already keen, as well as encouraging people to have a first go at things. I'm a bit aware that it's 20 past, so I'm going to keep moving on. Thank you, David, for pointing out about the NBN Atlas. Local environmental record centres also have a lot of mosses everywhere in our churchyards, so Siobhan. Yes, sorry to hear that, but maybe you need to get the moss identified and embrace the moss. A nightmare with horsetail infestation. Yeah, I think, yes, keep pulling it. I don't know of effective ways of dealing with horsetail, but I'm cutting and pulling. And I think it's that thing of surreptitious weeding of things that are natural, but it's not how you want the site to look. Paul makes a point about daffodils. Liam's very helpfully starred the ones that are questions, so I'll whiz to those. Rita's asking how you'd limit the spread of green alkanet. I think you Cut
Pull
it off
it-
at the
pull it
base.
up.
don't You pull it up, cut it off.
It has a stonking great taproot, and so you really do need to dig well down to pull it up when the soil is moist. End of story.
Yeah. Now then, down we go, down we go. I think that is all for questions. That's all the ones that Liam's very helpfully starred. So I think as it is actually just shy of 1:25, I'm going to draw it to a close now. I hope I haven't missed out any particular points that people wanted to raise or to ask. I'd just like to close by saying thank you so much again to both Mike and Isabel Tucker and also Ruth Russell-Jones. I think you can see by how long we've overrun and how many questions there have been, how much interest there's been. Absolutely brilliant presentations from both and really inspiring stories. So thank you again for taking part. And for everyone, please sign up for the other webinars and the rest of the week. I think they're all going to be really cracking and really interesting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.